Welcome to The Perspective. My name's Lorie Hartshorn, and I'm really glad you're joining us today. Let me ask you, do you love clutter? I doubt there's anyone out there who's going to say yes to that. We all feel better when our place is cleared of clutter. I don't know about you, it helps me think better, helps me function better. But the truth is, I don't always live clutter-free. And today I'm really looking forward to our guest. Her book is called Declutter Your Heart and Home. And we're thrilled to welcome Julia here, who's helping people simplify their lives in a truly transformative way. Julia Ubbenga, she is a minimalist living coach and the founder of Rich in What Matters, an online community dedicated to helping others find freedom through intentional living. And her debut book is out, Declutter Your Heart and Your Home. How a minimalist life, that's a tricky word, minimalist life yields maximum joy. It offers a fresh approach to minimalism, one that's actually not just about getting rid of stuff, well, that's good, but about creating a life of deeper peace and presence and purpose. There's something we all want. Well, Julia's own journey is a powerful testimony. Listen to this. She's reduced her material possessions by 75%. Wow. She's broken free from $40,000 in consumer debt, amazing, and discovered financial freedom and joy all through the power of minimalism. And if you've ever felt overwhelmed by clutter, whether in your home or your schedule or even your heart, this conversation is for you. Julia, welcome to the show today.
Thanks so much for having me on, Lorie. It's great to be here.
Okay, that is impressive that you would get rid of 75% of your stuff and reduce your consumer debt. That is simply amazing. How did you get to a place where you knew it was necessary?
So many of us are overwhelmed right now, and a big reason why we're overwhelmed is we simply have too much stuff to manage in our homes, in our hearts, in our minds. So the book tells a story that I haven't always been a minimalist. Far from it, actually. For years, I bought more and more stuff. I racked up $40,000 of consumer debt, like you said. I had all this stuff, but I wasn't happy. And for me personally, this led to a lot of stress and anxiety. And that's when I realized that my stuff was the problem. So I got rid of 75% of it. And I learned that you can live an abundant life without an abundance of stuff.
That is powerful. Do you think that our stuff, why do we buy all the stuff? Why do we need all the stuff in our life? Because I'm sure many of us listening are going, but I need my stuff.
I think society tells us that we need it. We believe that line that the more we have, the happier we'll become. We think happiness is found in our next purchase or possession. I certainly did for many years. And it wasn't until I experimented with less and realized I really didn't need all that stuff to be happy that I realized that maybe the way the culture was telling me to live wasn't really the way I needed to live.
That's so cool. Often we misunderstand minimalism, don't we? I mean, we think it might be about having a cup and a bowl in the cupboard and maybe just t-shirts and jeans in the closet, but it's not simply just getting rid of things, right, Julia? How do you define minimalism, and what are maybe some of the common misperceptions we have about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lorie. There are certainly misconceptions about minimalism. When I first heard the word minimalism, I thought of a home with white walls, next to nothing in it. And many people think a minimalist is a person maybe who dresses all in black, only owns 100 things. Maybe they don't have kids because they don't want their house to be messed up. But it's not that. It's not that at all. Minimalism is simply a tool to live your life with intention. It's about making space for the things that matter by letting go of the things that don't. And this applies to more than just your stuff. It applies to your possessions, yes, but also your thought patterns, your calendar commitments. You just start questioning it all, and you begin identifying what's essential in your life and then eliminating the rest. So it's about owning the right amount of stuff, not too much, not too little, so that your focus remains on what truly matters.
Is that what happened to you? What was your breaking point that you decided to go down this path of minimalism?
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I realized that I had too much stuff and the stress was just too much. I actually was diagnosed with postpartum depression, being at home, a stay-at-home mom, and I just had to get out of the overwhelm. And so that is really what I ended up doing, just letting go of my stuff and realizing there was such a lightness to my life as I lived with less. And then the book gives so many tools for anyone who feels called to do that too. to make that possible?
Well, you know what? Having kids, having babies, that early years of even having, especially when they're young, it is overwhelming for many. Would you say that the state of your home, whether you've got kids in it or not, can actually reflects the state of your soul? And just unpack that idea for us that you share about decluttering brings inner peace, like you said. So how does the state of our home reflect the state of our soul?
In my experience, it does. The book is divided into three sections that parallel a journey through an outer and an inner home. So the first section is laying the foundation, decluttering the soul. And then the journey continues up into the home to decluttering the main floor and the heart, and then continuing up to decluttering the upstairs in the mind. So there's always that outer and inner piece to decluttering throughout the book. And as I let go of my unneeded physical items, I realized I was actually curating two homes, an outer home and an inner home. And the first housed my possessions, but the second, the home of my soul, housed God. And I realized that my inner home was as cluttered as my outer home. And my inner home was filled with things like comparison, hurry, fear, distraction. And I talk about those in the book and give tools of how to declutter those. But this was a problem because our inner home is what Paul says is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And it was only once I decluttered both my inner and outer world that I really began to feel his movements in my life and then did find more of that inner peace.
I think that's very true in our lives. I mean, I shared just in the opening that I hate clutter. And it's not that I'm, OCD and everything's perfect in my house or whatever, but I really feel like I can't almost think with clutter around me. And so the external does affect the internal, doesn't it? When you first started the process, tell us a little bit about how it made you feel when you first started. Was it a little scary for you?
Well, was ready to experiment with it. I needed a change. And I would say that I felt so much better immediately. I just could think clearer. I could be more present to the people around me. And I think that is when I realized I was really on to something, when I could really focus on my husband and hear his answer to my question instead of asking him something and being like, oh, I have no idea what he said because I'm so distracted by all this stuff around me. And I could sit with my kids, I could play with them again and really just focus on them. So I was able to start seeing the details of their lives when the clutter started leaving our house. And that was such a game changer for me.
How did your husband and even your kids feel about it?
They were a little skeptical at first, especially since I was such a spender and used to buy stuff all the time. I'd buy my child, our oldest, I bought her a toy every week there for a while. So it was a big change for us. And once they saw just how much it changed me, I think that they were on board.
Yeah.
And they all know now.
Did you see a change in them eventually too? Like, did it have an impact on them?
Yeah, especially my kids. They have grown in generosity so much. Even just last weekend, they were invited to a birthday party. And so I said, hey, just shop the house for a toy. And it was no problem for them just to go through their toys, to grab something, put it in a box, and take it to the neighbors. And I think that if we weren't in that habit of constantly questioning our possessions and letting go of what we didn't love and want anymore, I think that would have been hard for them. So I think it's definitely made them more generous.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And I think my dad used to say this, do you own your stuff or does your stuff own you?
I love that.
Right? And
Yeah.
I just think stuff can control our lives in such an unhealthy way, either having it or not having it. And that's a beautiful thing that you're creating in your family and your children. Is it a switch of value system? Have you learned that it's like you're changing your value systems, not just with stuff, but with everything else?
Yeah, it teaches you to really discern what you let into your life. And that can be your commitments. Are you saying yes to everything just because you think you need to be doing and doing more? Or are you actually discerning your calendar commitments, the things that you buy? It makes you a more intentional consumer. So, yeah, I think it does shift your values to what really matters. You focus on what really matters, and then you can align your life and your choices with that.
That is beautiful. Well, we're going to come right back with Julia, and we're going to learn more about decluttering our heart and our home. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back to The Perspective. It's a delight to be learning about how to declutter our heart and home with Julia Ubbenga. Welcome back, Julia. Tell me about your faith. It plays a significant role in your approach to minimalism. And, how has your faith influenced this journey? And how do you see the connection between the spiritual and physical simplicity?
I love this question. My faith has helped me detach from my possessions. Initially, it was really difficult for me to let go of my stuff. But then I read Paul's words to Timothy that say, "For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it." And I realized that the things of the world, they may be good and beautiful, but the truly good, the truly beautiful, belong to a higher world. And we can sense the goodness and the beauty in worldly things, but none of them last. And I began viewing my possessions more as transient things. So I began seeing them differently as things like fireworks or bubbles or ocean waves, things that you observe in the moment and then you let them go. My faith has allowed me to see that just finally I realized none of this was ever mine in the first place, and I wasn't made to attach to it.
That is so good because often I think our stuff is really an identity issue. We feel that we are defined by it, that it's bringing value and worth and maybe our status in society. Do you think that that plays a factor in why we attach ourselves to our stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about that in the book. And I think that we often identify with what we own, with what we do. If you would describe yourself, I'm guessing that maybe your possessions might come up or, your job. And really, the scripture says that we are sons and daughters of God, and that is our identity. And I think when we do shift our focus away from our stuff back to the one who truly matters, we start to see that.
I really agree with that. I think that's the trappings of even our North American culture. I'm sure you've done some traveling as I have. And when you go to a culture where they just live with so little, I just experienced personally the joy and the ease that they lived with. Why is that the case, Julia?
Yeah, I think there's just freedom in that. The average American home now has over 300,000 items in it. 300,000. And we're just not made to manage that much stuff, and it's contributing to stress and anxiety, and they don't have that in those other countries where they own so little. We're not meant to mate to we're not meant for survival mode. We're not made to live with all this overwhelm and chaos and discontent. We can end that. So I wrote the book for anyone who wants to live that lighter life, and the book is just full of the practical tools to make that possible. And I think we can learn a lot from those countries, like you say, that do have less stuff.
Well, give us some practical tools because after this interview, I got to go home and I'm going to start decluttering. Okay. So, what is like the first, how do you get started with this?
Well, I think the best area to start is in your home that is causing you the most stress. So take a piece of paper and just write down all the areas of your home that you want to declutter, and then rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most stressful, 1 being the least, and start at number 10 and then just go down from there because that's going to create real change in your home, functional change. And you'll feel that lightning immediately. And then also start small. Even decluttering just 15 minutes a day can make a big difference. 15 minutes a day is 7.5 hours a month. It's 90 hours a year. You can get a lot done in 90 hours. So those small, consistent efforts lead to big changes. And the book will show you exactly what to do during those 15 minutes a day that you're decluttering.
Can you give us just a brief hint of what to do in those 15 minutes?
Well, sure. It really depends on what area of the home that you're going to start with. Is there one that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think the kitchen. Can we start there?
The kitchen would be a great spot to start. Yeah. So I use a tool called the power of half for the kitchen, and I have just started getting rid of half of my possessions in each category. So I'd go to the coffee mugs. If I had 14 coffee mugs, then I had 7, and I'd box up 7 of them, and I'd experiment with that. I'd see, okay, can I live with 7 coffee mugs?
Right.
Yes, I could. The kitchen has so many duplicate items, and so it's a great spot to just see if you can divide it in half, box up half of it. You don't have to get rid of it right away. You can leave it in storage for 3 months, and if you need something, go get it, bring it back into your life. But there's a good chance that you won't need it. And if you have it after 3 months, then just let it go.
I think that's so practical and so helpful. There's so many things that we really don't need in our lives and probably haven't used in a while. Talk to us
Mhm.
about the financial freedom that you experienced through this minimalism, including you breaking free of $40,000 in consumer debt. Like, how did adopting this lifestyle then help you financially?
Yes, it helped us out so much financially, Lori. In my experience, minimalism makes you an intentional spender, and that is a game changer. Shopping is no longer a hobby. We realize that we need less than we thought we did to be happy, and we stop throwing money toward random stuff. And that's going to break the cycle of consumer debt. It's going to put more money back in our bank account. So it does change your finances. And then, two, when you live a minimalist lifestyle, you're likely not renting a storage unit. You might own a smaller home, so your mortgage is smaller. You don't buy duplicate items. If you have, you know, one pair of jeans that you really love, you're not going to need 10 of them. And that all saves you money too. And this book has a chapter on money that'll give you the tools to help break free from consumer debt and to have better financial health too.
That's so great because really it's like a ripple effect, right? Of the spending, the buying. Now you got to take care of the stuff. You got to have a place for the stuff, right? The stress, like it just builds up, builds up, builds up. What do you say to people they're watching, think, I could just never do this? Like, but I'm feeling this overwhelm and anxiety. You talk about the externals, like in the home, but what things internally is it work together or are there things internal soul work that we need to do as well?
It's a really good question. I would say they can work together. I would say to do the soul work first. You can start anywhere, but it's really powerful if you can start with the soul work because what I find is that decluttering your home can give you a dopamine rush, just like buying something new can. And so if you're decluttering and then you're buying it all back in, you're really not making a change in your home and you're kind of just stuck in this declutter spending cycle. And so what I've found is if you can work on the heart, maybe uproot comparison with gratitude. That's the tool that I love for comparison is to use just counter it with gratitude. But if you're looking at your neighbor's stuff and you just let go of stuff, but then you see something they have and you're still caught in comparison and you want that, you're going to buy that. And then that cycle is going to continue and your home's still going to be full of stuff. So I think that if you can work on the inner decluttering piece as soon as you can, I think it can really go a long way to find freedom and peace.
You know what? That's so good. And it is, I think, so much a part of our journey, the dopamine rush, the comparison to others, the buying into the consumer mentality. So your final thoughts, just for someone considering stepping into this, maybe a trial run at first, but what would you say to them? They're feeling overwhelmed, maybe like you were, these babies and all the stuff in the house. And what would you say to them today?
But I would say go for it. What do you have to lose? See it as an experiment. You don't have to 100% commit. Just experiment with changing your living environment and see how you feel. If you feel better, then you're onto something. It's for you. And this book will show you how to transform your life so that you can find peace. So if you're interested, grab the book and just try it.
Well, can we just say that today is book launch day? Today is the day that the book comes out in all the places. So go to wherever you buy books and get Julia's book, Declutter Your Heart and Your Home. It's a beautiful book, which makes me want to read it. And it's full of practical tips and insights. Thank you so much, Julia, for writing it down, for now equipping many. And we just really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thanks so much, Lori. It was a fun conversation. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Ryan Walter, and during my 15-year NHL career, I signed the odd autograph, especially in Montreal. I remember once there was a young boy, and I signed my name, and then I put John 3:16 next to it, underneath it. And he looked up at his dad, and he said, "Dad, he's wrong. My name's not John, and it's 3:30. I love that story. You know what I love about John 3:16 is that God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. Love that idea. You know where I've been going recently, though, is to John 3:17, right? Where in 16 he sent, but in 17 he says, I didn't send my son to judge the world. I sent my son to save the world. Love that thought.
I'm sure we're all familiar with the phrase people pleasing. Are you a people pleaser? I mean, is that a good thing or not such a good thing? Trying to please or gain the approval of others for our own ego or to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Well, actually, that's not really such a healthy thing. And we see this as a negative thing. But Paul, he points out to us today in Scripture that there's one good reason actually to be a people pleaser. He says to be all things to all people. Well, what would that look like? Well, in Paul's letter to the Corinthian church, he's talking about the rights that he has as an apostle of Christ. I mean, he mentions a few of them. He says, I have the right to be supported financially as a minister of the gospel. I mean, I have the right to bring along a wife as other apostles like Peter have done while traveling in ministry, although Paul chose to be single, and that's a topic for another day. And he says, I have the right to eat and drink freely. And then he says, but here's the thing. I choose to lay down my own personal rights, not for my sake, but for the sake of the gospel. Well, today we're going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19 to 23 as we're following along in the devotional from the perspective today. Let me read this to you. These are Paul's words. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one of them not having the law, though I'm not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. Now, that's a lot of words there, right? Why is Paul willing to give up his freedoms, his rights? Well, it's for the sake of the gospel. So people will actually turn to Christ. He doesn't want anything to get in the way of that. You see, Paul was raised with all the rules and restrictions and regulations of keeping the law. He knows what that looked like. He knew that by following the rules, too, that didn't actually bring him closer to Christ because, well, frankly, he missed it. He was a persecutor of Christians. But if keeping the rules would help someone actually come to Christ, then Paul was willing to keep the rules. I mean, rules back in those days were like, food restrictions, religious feasts that took place. But for those that were not living under all those Jewish laws, like the Gentiles, he would not force them to follow all those rules. I mean, in that culture, you see, slavery was a common thing. Slavery was common in most households. It was a cultural understanding. And he says, so he uses slavery as an example. He says, I'm not a slave to all these rules and regulations or restrictions of the religious law that he once was. He said, I'm a free man. He didn't use his freedom, though, to make a point. He gave up his freedoms to win people to Christ. Here's an example that Paul didn't eat pork or drink wine if it offended somebody, whether it was a believer or a non-believer. So let me ask you, would you give up your freedoms just to reach others for Christ? And if so, well, what would that look like? Maybe in the case of drink, maybe you feel free to drink some alcohol, not to get drunk, but just to enjoy it. Maybe it's even part of your culture. But another person might feel it's wrong to drink. So what do? Is it about being right? Or is it about holding on to your right to be right? Or is it about being willing to lay aside what is freedom for you and not freedom for another in order not to hinder someone from coming to Christ? You see, there's often two extremes, isn't there? There's legalism on the one hand, where we follow all the rules. And then there's licentiousness or license to do whatever we want or feel like. And Paul is saying there is freedom in Christ, but it's not a freedom to do just what you want. You're free to follow Christ, but that requires you to set aside some rights and privileges for the sake of others. So today, are you willing to set aside maybe some of your rights and privileges for the sake of the gospel so that others will be saved? Lay down your ideas of the rules, lay down your ideas of the freedoms, and just point people to Christ.
Will you donate 2 hours of your time? Crossroads Prayer Center is seeking people with a heart willing to join in the amazing work God is doing through prayer. Providing over 1,300 prayer interactions daily, Crossroads Prayer Partners speak biblical truth and words of life over people's need. Join in God's transforming work through prayer and enrich your faith. Learn more at crossroads.ca/prayervolunteer.
Well, I don't know about you, but I got a new perspective today on decluttering. Are you going, are you turning around right now and going to clean out a closet or something? I think I am too. But what I heard more importantly in Julia's message is it's not just about physically cleaning up, it's about actually creating peace and removing anxiety from our lives and living in a more simple way that actually shifts our values, right, to what's really important. Julia's book's coming out today, so why don't you go get it? Declutter Your Heart and Your Home. Check that out. And also, if you'd like some encouragement, Mike provides a monthly devotional from the perspective. It's got a daily reading for you, and we're also teaching through this. So why don't you call us or actually go on the website, call us at 1-855-910-6297. And I hope that as you call us to share with us your prayer requests, we're here for you. I mean, life can be tough. We got a lot of pressures. We got a lot of responsibilities, and maybe you're feeling overwhelmed today. Well, we're here for you, and we're available 24 hours, 7 days a week. So call the number on the screen there and let us know how we can pray for you. We want to, one thing I learned about prayer, it gives you a fresh perspective. And so often we just need a fresh perspective. We need, which leads to peace, which leads to clarity. So why don't you call us today? We're here for you. Know that you're loved and that whatever you're going through, God is with you. Thanks for joining us.